The rancher's wounded heart, a mail-order bride who saved his ranch from burning. The train wheels screamed against Montana rails as Clara Morgan pressed her trembling hand to her belly. 3 years since the miscarriage. 3 years since she had lost everything that mattered. Now she was traveling west to marry a stranger, carrying nothing but broken dreams and a desperate hope for redemption. But when Edmund Denton took one look at her and declared the engagement off, Clara's world shattered again. Standing alone on that dusty platform with nowhere to go, she never imagined the weathered rancher watching from the shadows would offer her something more dangerous than marriage. He'd offer her a chance to heal. And when rustlers came to burn his ranch, Clara would have to choose between running from love again or standing her ground to fight for the family she never thought she'd deserve. If you love stories of second chances, healing hearts, and the wild frontier, hit that subscribe button. And let's ride into this tale of courage, love, and finding home in the most unexpected places. The September sky stretched endless over Silver Bluff Station as the locomotive wheezed to a stop. Steam hissed from the engine like the dying breath of some great beast. Clara Morgan pressed her gloved hand against the window, watching the platform materialize through the vapor. Rough planks, a water tower. Beyond that, the vast Montana wilderness that had haunted her dreams for weeks. She'd left Boston 43 days ago with Edmund Denton's letters tucked in her traveling case. Mail-order bride. The words still tasted bitter as old coffee, but choices were few for a woman of 26 with no family, dwindling savings, and a secret that made her stomach clench every time she thought about children. The secret she'd told no one, not even Edmund. 3 years ago, she'd carried a child for 5 months before losing it in blood and agony on a cold February night. The doctor said she could try again, but Clara had learned that hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. Edmund's proposal had seemed respectable enough. A dry goods merchant, widowed, seeking companionship and help with his business. Clean, simple, safe. The porter set her trunk on the platform with a thud that echoed her heartbeat. Clara smoothed her navy traveling dress and stepped down. The air hit different here, thin and sharp, carrying the scent of sage and horse leather. Miss Morgan. She turned to find a thin man with pomaded hair and merchant-soft hands. Edmund Denton looked older than his letter suggested, his mouth pinched like he'd been sucking lemons. Mr. Denton, she offered her hand. He barely touched her fingers before dropping them. There's been a change in circumstances. The platform tilted slightly, or maybe that was just her world coming apart again. I don't understand. My situation has altered. I've decided against remarriage. He pulled out a leather pouch, coins clinking. For your troubles. The return train leaves tomorrow morning. The crowd gathering at the platform's edge stirred like wheat in wind. Whispers rose and fell. Mail-order bride. Sent back. Poor thing. Clara's spine straightened of its own accord. She'd scrubbed floors in Boston. She'd survived typhoid. She'd lost a child and somehow kept breathing. She wouldn't crumble now. Keep your money, Mr. Denton. Compensation isn't the same as honor. The voice came from behind her, low and steady as bedrock. Clara turned to see a man built like he'd been carved from the landscape itself. Broad shoulders, sun-weathered face, eyes the color of winter sky. His hat shadowed his features, but she caught the hard set of his jaw. Edmund's face flushed. This isn't your concern, Carver. Wade Carver. Even in Boston, she'd heard that name. Owned the largest ranch in 3 counties. The kind of man who could buy Edmund's store with pocket change. Maybe not. Carver's voice carried no heat, just fact. But leaving a woman stranded reflects on all of us. A commotion erupted near the freeway depot. Horses reared as a wagon lurched sideways, its wheel catching in the platform gap. Barrels tumbled like dominoes, one rolling straight toward Clara with the momentum of a cannonball. She should have moved, should have run. But for one terrible moment, she was back in that Boston boarding house, room blood on the sheets, a doctor telling her some things couldn't be fixed. Strong hands grabbed her waist, lifting and spinning her clear. The barrel crashed into the bench where she'd stood, wood exploding into kindling. Clara found herself pressed against Carver's chest, his arms steel around her waist. He smelled of leather and wind and something indefinably safe. You hurt, his breath stirred her hair. No, Her voice came out steadier than her knees felt. He set her down gentle as handling china, but didn't immediately let go. His eyes searched hers, not the way men usually looked at women. He looked at her like he was reading trail signs, learning something essential. "Thank you," she managed. He touched his hat brim and stepped back. The crowd pressed closer now, excitement over near death mixing with the scandal of a rejected bride. Edmund had vanished like smoke. "Miss Morgan," Carver's voice cut through the chatter. "You have plans." "I'll manage." The lie came automatic. She had $43, 3 dresses, and no return ticket. "The Riverside takes lodgers. Clean place." He paused, and she saw him make some internal calculation. "I'm looking for a housekeeper. Temporary position, 3 months through winter, room board fair wages. End of term, you choose. Stay on or I'll buy your passage anywhere you want to go. First class." The offer hung between them like a rope bridge over a canyon. Behind her lay humiliation and an empty future. Ahead, who knew? But his eyes held no improper speculation, no trace of the looks she'd dodged in Boston. Just a straight business proposition from a man who'd literally pulled her from death's path. "Your wife wouldn't object." "No wife, just me, my foreman, and 15 hands. Big house going to waste." The crowd leaned in, sensing drama's next act. Clara thought of her mother's voice: "When one door closes, find a window. When the window's locked, build your own door." "I accept your offer, Mr. Carver. 3 months as agreed." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe? Or respect? "Wade, just wait out here." He picked up her trunk like it weighed nothing. "Wagons this way." The crowd parted their whispers, following like tumbleweeds. Clara kept her chin high, her stride steady. Let them talk. She'd faced worse than gossip. The wagon sat sturdy and plain, built for work, not show. Wade set her trunk in back, then offered his hand to help her up. His palm was calloused as tree bark, strong enough to crush but gentle in its grip. "The ranch is 2 hours north," he said, settling beside her, Vershortem. "Roads rough in places. I'm not made of glass." The ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "No, I don't believe you are." He clicked to the horses and the wagon rolled forward. Clara didn't look back at the station, at Edmund's store, at the pointing fingers and wagging tongues. The road stretched ahead, rutted and uncertain, leading toward mountains that scraped the sky. "Why?" she asked when the town shrank to miniature behind them. He knew what she meant. Man who can't honor his word in small things can't be trusted in large ones. Besides, he glanced at her sideways, takes courage to step off that train knowing what waited. Takes more to stand straight when it went sideways. Ranch life isn't easy. I need someone with backbone. And if I disappoint, then come spring, you'll have first-class fare to anywhere. I keep my word, Miss Morgan." "Clara, if we're to work together." This time his smile was full, transforming his weathered face. "Fair enough, Clara." The horses kept steady pace, and she found herself relaxing into the wagon's rhythm. The landscape rolled past, grass like an ocean of golden green sky so vast it made her chest ache, mountains standing guard on the horizon. A red-tailed hawk circled overhead, riding thermals she couldn't see. "It's beautiful," she said, then felt foolish. What did beauty matter when survival was the question? Has its moments, has its teeth too. Winter comes hard and fast. Summer burns everything brown. Land doesn't forgive mistakes. Neither did Boston. She kept her tone matter-of-fact. Pity was another luxury she couldn't afford. "Where'd you learn to stand so steady when the world tilts?" "My mother died when I was 12. Father followed 2 years later. Lung fever from the factories. Been making my own way since." She paused, then added softer, "You learn to bend or you break, or you learn when to stand firm." He navigated around a pothole deep enough to swallow a calf. Like back there with Edmund. Pride's all some of us have to keep. Pride and backbone. Good combination for ranch work. They rode in companionable silence for a while. Clara found herself studying him sidelong. The way his hands held the reins firm, but not tight. How he read the road ahead like a book. The patient set of his shoulders. He drove like he spoke no wasted motion, everything with purpose. But there was something else. A shadow behind his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking. Pain carefully hidden but not quite buried. "Tell me about the ranch," she said. "Triple C Carver Cattle Company. 8,000 acres, 2,000 head. Run it clean, treat the men fair. House needs work, been just men too long. But it's solid. Stone foundation, good roof. You'll have your own room, lock on the door. Meals with the hands or in the kitchen, your choice. The propriety of it eased another knot in her chest. And my duties. Keep house managed meals. The men cook breakfast and supper for themselves in the bunkhouse, but I take lunch at the main house. Laundry once a week. Ranch accounts if you've got the schooling for it. My foreman handles them now, but his eyes aren't what they were. I kept books for a millinery shop in Boston. I can manage accounts. Good, he paused. Fair warning, the men are rough-mannered but respectful. Anyone gives you trouble, you tell me, or Silas straight off. I don't tolerate nonsense. She believed him. Something in his tone suggested troublemakers would deeply regret their choices. The sun climbed higher, warming her face. Her traveling dress felt heavy and practical for this place. But she'd adapt. She always had. There, Wade pointed ahead. Triple C land starts at that ridge. Clara saw fence posts marching toward the horizon, wire strung taut between them. Beyond that, the land rolled in waves of grass dotted with cattle like black boats on a golden sea. In the distance, buildings clustered, house barn and outbuildings arranged with tactical precision. It's larger than I expected. Started with 160 acres and a dozen cows. Built it piece by piece. Every post, every wire, every building, know them all by feel. The pride in his voice wasn't boastful, just fact. This was a man who'd created something from nothing, who'd carved civilization from wilderness through will and work. As they descended toward the ranch, Clara felt the wheel of fortune turning. This morning, she'd been a failed mail-order bride. This afternoon, what housekeeper seemed too small a word for what lay ahead. This felt like standing at a crossroads where the old maps ended and new territories began. One more thing, Wade said as the ranch buildings grew larger. I should have asked before you have any conditions, things you won't do or can't abide. The question surprised her. When had anyone asked what she needed? I don't abide cruelty, she said finally, to animals or people. And I'll need Sunday mornings for myself, church if there's one nearby, or just quiet time. Nearest church is in town, but Reverend Hayes rides circuit once a month, holds services in our main room. His jaw tightened. As for cruelty, man who'd hurt something weaker than himself has no place on my land. They rolled through the ranch gate under an arch made from massive timber with Triple C burned deep into the wood. Dogs ran out barking, horses lifted their heads from the corral, men emerged from various buildings to see who'd come calling. Wade pulled up at the main house. 2 stories of solid timber and stone-wide porch, wrapped around 3 sides glass windows that must have cost a fortune to fray it in. It looked like it had grown from the earth itself, sturdy and permanent as the mountains beyond. Welcome to the Triple C, Clara. She climbed down before he could help, needing to meet this new world on her own feet. The men had gathered at respectful distance, curious but not crowding, weathered faces showing cautious interest. Boys, Wade addressed them. This is Miss Clara Morgan. She'll be keeping house for us through winter. You'll treat her with the same respect you'd show your mothers and sisters. Or you'll answer to me. Clear. A chorus of "Yes, boss" rumbled through the group. Clara noted how they stood easy but attentive, the way good soldiers stood near a commander they trusted. Silas, Wade beckoned to a grizzled man with sharp eyes and steady hands. This is my foreman. He'll help you settle in, show you where things are. Silas touched his hat. Ma'am, welcome. His voice carried Scottish hills underneath western dust. Thank you, Silas. Just Silas, ma'am. We don't stand much on ceremony here. Wade lifted her trunk again. I'll show you your room. Silas, have someone bring up water for washing. Supper's at 6 unless the sky falls. Unless the sky falls, Silas confirmed. Inside the house revealed itself slowly. Entry hall with coat hooks and boot rack. Parlor with furniture built for durability over beauty. Kitchen that made Clara's hands itch to set it right. Good bones, but suffering from male neglect. Wade led her upstairs to a corner room with 2 windows, a bed with actual springs, dresser washstand, and small writing desk. Was my sister's room, he said, setting down her trunk. She married a banker in Denver 5 years back. Keeps asking me to visit, but he shrugged. Ranch doesn't run itself. Something flickered across his face when he mentioned his sister. Pain quickly hidden. It's perfect. She meant it. After boarding house cubicles, this felt like a palace. I'll leave you to settle. Privy's out back, pumps in the kitchen. Any questions, just ask. He paused at the door. Clara, that took sand today. Standing up to Edmund, accepting my offer without knowing me from Adam. Either very brave or very desperate. Maybe both. Both works fine out here. He touched his hat and was gone, boots steady on the stairs. Clara sat on the bed testing the mattress. Real Springs clean linens, a room of her own with a door that locked. Through one window she could see the barn and corrals. Through the other, grassland rolled toward mountains that touched the sky. She unpacked slowly, hanging her 3 dresses, setting her few books on the desk, placing her mother's silver brush on the dresser. Each item claimed space made this real. At the bottom of her trunk lay Edmund's letters tied with string. She held them for a moment, then dropped them in the empty chamber pot. Come morning, they'd serve a more useful purpose than they ever had as promises. A knock interrupted her thoughts. A young ranch hand stood in the hallway with a bucket of steaming water and clean towels. Ma'am, Silas sent these up. Thank you. Buck Morrison. Buck. He couldn't be more than 19, all knees and elbows, an eager smile. Real glad you're here, ma'am. Gets mighty tired of beans and salt pork. She hid her smile. I'll see what can be done about that, Buck. He brightened like she'd promised Christmas and nearly tripped over his feet leaving. Clara poured water into the basin, unwound her traveling hair, and washed the train soot and platform dust from her face. In the mirror, a woman looked back, not young anymore, not old, yet marked by loss but not broken by it. A woman who'd stepped off certainty's cliff and found unexpectedly that she could fly, or at least glide. Through the window, she watched Wade talking with his men near the corral. He moved with economy of motion, every gesture deliberate, a man who said what he meant and meant what he said. 3 months he'd offered, 3 months to prove herself, to decide her path, to build something more than survival. Clara straightened her spine, pinned up her hair, and prepared to meet her future. Whatever it held, it had to be better than the past she'd left on that platform. And if it wasn't, well, she'd survived worse. She'd survived this too. But watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold, hearing the cattle low in the distance, and the men's voices rise in rough harmony from the bunkhouse, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, small as a mustard seed, fragile as spring ice. But they're all the same. Sometimes that's all a person needed. A door cracked open, a hand offered an honest dealing. A chance to prove that backbone could be worth more than beauty and pride, more precious than gold. The dinner bell rang across the ranch, calling all hands home. Clara smoothed her second-best dress and headed downstairs to begin earning her keep in this wide, wild place where the sky went on forever, and a woman might just find room to breathe. The rooster crowed at 4:30 sharp, but Clara was already awake, staring at the ceiling beams in the pre-dawn darkness. First morning at the Triple C, time to prove she belonged here with more than brave words. She dressed by lamplight, her plainest dress, the brown calico she'd saved for hard work, pinned her hair tight, tied on the apron she'd found hanging behind the door. The house lay quiet as a held breath. Through her window, stars still pricked the sky like scattered salt. The kitchen waited like a test. Cast iron stove, cold, and black pump handle stiff with nighttime chill. Clara built the fire with methodical care, kindling, then larger wood, adjusting the damper just so. Her mother's voice echoed, "A good fire is like a good reputation. Build it steady and it'll serve you all day." Water from the pump ran rust-colored at first, then clear and cold. She filled the coffee pot, set it on the stove, and surveyed her battlefield. The kitchen had good bones, solid counters, ample shelves, a pantry door that didn't sag. But Lord, the neglect. Grease filmed every surface, dishes stacked haphazard, something sticky spilled on the floor and left to become part of the landscape. First things first, coffee strong enough to float a horseshoe. That's what working men needed. She found the grounds measured generous. While it brewed, she explored the pantry. Flour, thank heaven. Salt pork, beans, potatoes, growing eyes. Precious little else. She'd need to speak with Wade about supplies. The back door banged open at 5 sharp. Men trooped in, 15 rough faces, hair slicked with pump water, shoulders hunched against morning cold. They stopped short, seeing her. Morning, ma'am? Silas led the greeting hat in hand. Good morning. Coffee's ready. Cups are... She looked around, spotted a shelf of mismatched mugs. There. They filed past like schoolboys murmuring thanks. She watched them settle at the long pine table, each man clearly having his spot established by time and hierarchy. Wade's chair at the head sat empty. Boss doesn't take breakfast with us, Silas explained, reading her glance. He's out checking the herd. Been up since 4. Clara nodded, filing the information. She pulled the skillet from its hook, cast iron, well-seasoned beneath the grime. A quick scrub, then onto the heat. Salt pork sizzled, filling the kitchen with smoke and scent. Biscuits? She asked the room at large. Buck's head snapped up like a hunting dog. Ma'am, can't have breakfast without biscuits. The mix came together under her hands, flour, lard, buttermilk from the spring house. She'd made 1,000 batches in harder times, hands working without thought. Roll cut onto the pan, into the oven. While they baked, she scrambled eggs in the pork drippings, set out plates, found a crock of apple butter, hiding behind pickles. The men watched sidelong, trying not to stare. She kept her movements calm, efficient. Let them see she knew her business. Grub's ready. They fell on the food like wolves, but polite wolves. Please and thank you and mighty fine rumbled around mouthfuls. The biscuits vanished first. She made mental note, double batch tomorrow. Where are you from, Miss Clara? That from a weathered hand with kind eyes. Boston. Long way from home. This is home now. Nods around the table. They understood that. Most of them had come from somewhere else, drawn by land and possibility and the chance to be more than what birth had made them. After breakfast, she studied them as they headed out. Silas organizing with quiet authority. 2 men to ride, fence 3 to the horse pasture, others to various tasks. Wade appeared from the barn, spoke briefly with his foreman, then strode toward the house. Clara had the kitchen half clean by then, attacking grease with hot water and determination. He paused in the doorway, taking in the changes. Coffee, she offered. Obliged. She poured, watched him cup the mug in hands that dwarfed it. He smelled of horses and morning wind. Biscuits were good. Men haven't stopped talking about them. It's just flour and lard, nothing special. It is when you've been eating Buck's cooking for a month. The smile creased his eyes. Speaking of which, supplies. Make a list of what you need. Silas goes to town Saturdays. The pantry is fairly bare. Get what you need, within reason. I'm good at stretching $1. I'm sure you are, but feed them well. They work hard. A man with a full belly works better than one thinking about his hunger. She liked that practical kindness. I'll have lunch ready at noon. I take mine at 12:30, usually in the office. I'll show you where. He drained the cup, set it by the pump. You settling in all right? Fine, thank you. Good. He turned to go, then paused. Clara, the house hasn't seen a woman's touch since my mother died 6 years ago. Whatever you think needs doing, do it. You don't need permission to make things right. After he left, she stood still a moment, absorbing the weight of that trust. Then back to work. The kitchen first. She couldn't cook proper in a pigsty, scrub the stove, scour the table, organize the shelves. Everything had its place in her mother's kitchen. Everything would here too. By 10, the kitchen gleamed. Not fancy, it would never be fancy, but clean as honest work could make it. She explored the rest of the house, mapping her new territory. Dining room with a table that could seat 20. Wade's office desk overflowing with papers, ledgers stacked on shelves. 2 parlors, one clearly for business, one that might have been pleasant once but now felt abandoned. Upstairs, Wade's room door firmly closed, her own and 4 others gathering dust. The whole place felt like a house in mourning. Functional but not alive. Well, she'd see about that. Lunch required strategy. Stew from last night's leftover beef potatoes, rescued from sprouting onions discovered hiding in a sack. Fresh bread, she'd learned that secret in the boarding house. Men would forgive much if you fed them warm bread. At 12:30 sharp, she knocked on the office door. Come. Wade sat behind the desk, ledgers spread like maps. He'd shed his coat sleeves, rolled up, and she couldn't help noticing the strength in his forearms, the way his shirt pulled across his shoulders. She set the tray down harder than necessary. Smells good. He moved papers aside. You don't need to knock. Office is open during working hours. I'll remember that. She turned to go. Join me. She stopped. That wouldn't be proper. According to whose rules, he gestured at the chair across from him, I'd like to discuss house arrangements. Easier done over food than shouting across the kitchen. She sat perched on the edge like a bird ready for flight. He pushed a plate toward her. Tell me what needs fixing first. Business then? She could do business. Supplies as discussed. The stove needs blacking, several windows stick. There's a board loose on the back steps, dangerous in winter. The spring house door doesn't latch proper. He wrote as she talked quick notes in a strong hand. What else? The men's laundry. They do their own mostly. Sheets and such once a week would be appreciated. They'll pay extra for personal items, socks, shirts, $1 a month per man usually. 15 extra. In Boston, that was a month's rent. I can manage that. Good. What about the house itself? She chose words carefully. It's well-built, solid, but it feels abandoned. Like everyone's just camping here temporary. Something flickered in his eyes. That's one way to put it. My mother made it a home after she died. He shrugged. Men don't think about curtains and such. Would you mind if I made some changes? Nothing costly, just arranging things different. Maybe some sewing. I said you don't need permission. I meant it. He studied her over his coffee cup. You always this careful about overstepping. I've learned to be. Hard teacher experience. He pushed back from the desk. I'll get Tom to fix that board today. The windows might need to wait for Sunday. Anything urgent? No, thank you. She gathered the dishes, acutely aware of him watching. Not the way Edmund had looked, calculating worth like pricing goods. Wade looked at her like he was reading weather signs, trying to understand patterns and possibilities. That afternoon, she attacked the laundry. The wash house sat behind the kitchen tub scrubbers, a stove for heating water. She sorted piles, set water to boil, rolled up her sleeves. Physical work felt good after years of careful stitches in the millinery shop. Here effort showed immediate results. Need help with the wringer? Buck stood in the doorway, eager as a puppy. If you can spare the time. He bounded forward. Together they fed sheets through the wringer, him cranking, while she guided fabric. He chattered about ranch life, who did what, which horses bit, and which were gentle. Information gold delivered free. Mr. Wade seems a fair boss, she ventured. The best, doesn't ask anything he wouldn't do himself. Pays on time too. Not all do. Buck's face darkened. That Crowley outfit to the south, they'd steal milk from a baby and call it business. The Crowley, a big syndicate buying up land. They wanted the Triple C bad, but Mr. Wade won't sell. Makes them mighty unfriendly. He caught himself. Sorry, ma'am, shouldn't gossip. It's not gossip if it's useful information. She fed another sheet through. Are they dangerous? Mr. Wade can handle them. Buck's faith was absolute. He's face down worse. By evening, sheets hung like white flags across the yard. Clara's back ached, her hands were raw, but satisfaction warmed her chest. Visible progress, the best kind. Supper was simple beans, seasoned with pork cornbread, canned peaches for dessert. The men cleaned their plates, Buck going so far as to lick his spoon before remembering manners. After they left, she made 2 plates knocked on the office door. Thought you might be hungry. Wade looked up from his ledger's lamplight, catching the planes of his face. Lost track of time. She set his plate down, took the chair opposite without asking this time. They ate in companionable silence, night sounds drifting through the window, cattle lowing, a coyote's distant call wind in the cottonwoods. Good day, he asked finally. Productive. I'll need lye soap on that supply list. And bluing for the wash. Noted. Men behaving perfect gentlemen. They better be. No jest in his tone. You made quite an impression. Silas says they're already taking bets on tomorrow's breakfast. What are the odds on pancakes? His laugh surprised them both, rich and full, transforming his face. I'll put $5 on pancakes myself. Then I'd better make eggs. She surprised herself teasing him, but his laugh had loosened something, made the space between them easier. Contrary woman. Practical. Can't have the boss losing money on a sure bet. They finished eating, conversation drifting to ranch matters. He asked her opinion on purchasing winter supplies, whether she preferred wood or coal for the stove, if she needed help with heavy work. Practical talk, but underneath she sensed him taking her measure, still fitting her into the ranch's rhythm. "I'll say good night," she said, finally gathering dishes. "Clara," his voice stopped her at the door. "That schedule you're planning, the one on the slate board I saw you hanging. Smart thinking. Structure helps." He'd noticed. She'd thought he was out when she'd hung it. Men work better knowing what to expect. "So do women, I expect." "Yes." "Then we understand each other. Good night." Walking back to the kitchen, Clara felt the shape of her new life settling around her like a well-worn coat. Wake before dawn, feed hungry men, wrestle dirt into submission. Sleep earned by honest labor. Not what she'd imagined boarding that train in Boston, but somehow more real than all Edmund's promises. She pumped water to wash dishes, watching lamplight from the office window spill gold across the yard. Inside, Wade worked late over his ledgers, planning and calculating, holding his empire together through will and careful management. Two solitary people sharing a roof, each carrying their own load. But maybe she dried the last plate, hung it on its hook. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was how homes got built in this wild place. One meal at a time, one clean sheet at a time, one day following another until the temporary became permanent and the house became home. The chalkboard caught her eye. Monday washing, Tuesday ironing, Wednesday baking, Thursday mending, Friday heavy cleaning, Saturday town supplies, Sunday rest, light duties. Structure, indeed, a framework to hang a life on. Tomorrow she'd make those pancakes just to see him smile again. Tonight she'd fall asleep to the sound of wind and grass and dream of nothing at all. That too was progress. The discovery came 3 weeks into October, hidden beneath ranch ledgers like a guilty secret. Clara had been organizing Wade's office while he rode fence with the men. The desk was chaos, bills mixed with cattle records, correspondence scattered like autumn leaves. She sorted methodically, making neat piles when her fingers found the leather portfolio tucked behind the account books. Personal papers. She almost put it back unopened, but the corner of a photograph caught her eye. A young woman with Wade's serious eyes and a banker's collar beside her, Sarah, the sister who'd married the banker in Denver, the sister who'd called Wade to visit, the sister whose room Clara now occupied. But as Clara lifted the photograph, other papers spilled out. Newspaper clippings, telegrams, a letter in feminine handwriting that began "Dear Wade" and ended with "Please don't blame yourself." Her hands shook as she read. Denver Daily, March 15th, 1883. Wife of prominent banker found dead. The article was brief, clinical. Mrs. Sarah Carver Manning discovered in her home. Apparent accident, survived by husband Charles Manning and brother Wade Carver of Montana. But the telegram told a different story. Wade, stop. Charles drinking again. Stop, worse than before. Stop, afraid to leave. Stop, please come, stop, Sarah. Dated 2 days before the newspaper article. The letter was harder to read, water stains blurring some words. Wade, you couldn't have known how bad it would get. Charles seemed so gentle when we courted, but you were right about him from the start. The drinking, the rages. Yesterday I can't write it, but I wanted you to know it wasn't your fault. Whatever happens, it wasn't your fault. All my love, Sarah. Clara sat back in Wade's chair, heart hammering. Not an accident, and Wade knew it. Her own losses seemed small suddenly. A miscarriage, devastating as it was, had been no one's fault. But this, Wade had lived 3 years knowing his sister died because he couldn't save her, knowing he'd let her marry a man who would kill her. No wonder he carried such shadows. Find something interesting. Clara's head snapped up. Wade stood in the doorway, hat in hand, face carved from stone. How long had he been watching I was organizing? Her voice sounded guilty even to her. The papers fell out. I didn't mean to pry. But you read them anyway. She could lie, should lie, but Clara had learned that truth, however painful, built stronger foundations than pretty deceptions. Yes. He stepped into the room, closed the door behind him. Not threatening, but final. Whatever conversation was coming, it would be private. So now you know. He took the papers from her hands, stacked them neat. My sister married a monster because I didn't stop her. She died because I failed her. You couldn't have known. I did know. His voice was flat and emotionless. Saw how Charles looked at her like property to be owned. Heard talk about his temper, his drinking. But Sarah was so happy, so sure she'd found her prince, he laughed bitter. I wanted her happy, wanted to believe people could change. Clara rose from his chair, moved to the window where afternoon light painted everything gold. Outside, normal life continued. Men worked at cattle horses, grazed the world spun on. But in this room, old wounds bled fresh. She wrote you weren't to blame. Sarah always was too kind for her own good. Wade sat heavily in the chair she'd vacated. Been carrying those papers 3 years now. Reading them when the guilt gets too heavy. Reminding myself what happens when you let people you love make foolish choices. The pieces clicked together. His careful distance from the hired women in town. His surprise at Clara's backbone, her ability to stand firm. His need for someone strong. Is that why you offered me work? Because you thought I was strong enough to take care of myself? Maybe. Partly. He looked up into her then, and the pain in his eyes stole her breath. Can't save someone who won't be saved. Can't protect someone who won't protect themselves. But I thought, maybe I could surround myself with people who wouldn't need saving. Clara understood now. The careful way he watched her when men were around. How he'd made sure the hands respected her, his insistence that she tell him about any trouble. Not just employer concern, the desperate vigilance of a man who'd failed once and wouldn't fail again. Wade, she turned from the window, faced him across the desk that held his sister's ghost. You couldn't have saved her. Short of tying her up and locking her away, what could you have done? Something, anything, made him show his true face before the wedding. Followed them to Denver, been there when she needed help. And if she'd refused your help, if she'd chosen him anyway? The question hung between them like smoke. Wade had no answer because there was no answer. Just the terrible truth that love couldn't always save people from their own choices. I lost a child. The words tumbled out before Clara could stop them. Wade went very still. 3 years ago, in Boston, I was 5 months along when she wrapped her arms around herself, old pain blooming fresh. The doctor said it happens sometimes. No reason. No fault, just loss. Clara, no, let me finish, please. She took a breath, gathered courage. After I couldn't bear to be around children, couldn't stand their mother's pitying looks, couldn't face the questions about when I'd try again. So when Edmund wrote, when he offered a new start somewhere, no one knew my business. It seemed like Providence. But Edmund failed you too. Edmund freed me. The words surprised them both. His rejection forced me off the safe path. Made me find something stronger than settling for security. She moved around the desk, knelt beside his chair. Brave now, reckless with truth. Wade, we both carry ghosts, but carrying them isn't the same as being haunted by them. Your sister made her choices. My baby wasn't meant to be. We can honor those losses without letting them rule our lives. He touched her cheek, then fingers rough and warm. How did you get so wise? Pain teaches hard lessons, but it teaches them well. For a moment, the office felt suspended outside time. Two wounded people, recognizing kindred, damaged the possibility of healing together, rather than bleeding alone. Then the dinner bell rang, calling them back to the present. Wade dropped his hand, stepped back. We should go. Men will wonder. Yes, but Clara didn't move immediately. Wade, thank you for trusting me with this. Thank you for understanding. As they left the office, Wade carefully locked the door. But Clara knew he wasn't locking away Sarah's papers. He was locking away the isolation that had kept him safe and solitary for 3 years. Tomorrow they'd return to their careful employer-employee dance. But tonight, over supper and evening chores, something would be different. The weight of shared secrets, the relief of confession, the tentative trust of two people who'd learned that strength could be built from breaking. Walking to the dining room, Clara felt a strange lightness. For 3 years, she'd carried her loss in silence. Now, in this wild place with this careful man, the burden finally felt shared. Outside, the Montana sky painted itself purple and gold. Inside, the Triple C family gathered for another meal. But in the space between Clara and Wade, understanding bloomed slow and sure as spring grass after winter's thaw. Some foundations Clara realized could only be built on broken ground. The scream cut through the afternoon quiet like a rusty blade. Clara dropped the bread dough she'd been kneading and ran toward the soundflower still dusting her hands. Behind the barn chaos, men clustered around something on the ground, voices sharp with urgency. "Give her room," Silas's command parted the crowd. Buck lay twisted in the dirt, face white as fresh paper, left arm bent at an angle that made Clara's stomach lurch. Blood ran from a gash above his eye, painting half his face crimson. His breath came in short, painful gasps. "Horse spooked," Tom explained quickly. "Threw him into the fence post." Clara pushed through, dropping to her knees beside the boy. "Don't move in yet. Buck, can you hear me?" His eyes rolled, found hers. "Hurts. I know." She kept her voice steady as her mother's had been that night. Papa came home with his hand mangled from the factory machines. "Where's the doctor?" "Doc Morrison's 20 miles out delivering the Garrett baby," someone said. "Won't be back till tomorrow. Maybe day after." Clara's mind raced. "In Boston you called for help. Out here you became the help or watch people die. I need hot water, clean cloth, whiskey." She kept her voice steady as stone. "Silas, find me 2 straight boards for splints. Tom, get rope. Wade, where's Wade?" "Riding in the north pasture. Someone's gone to fetch him." No time to wait. Buck's breathing grew more ragged, shock setting in. Clara ran her hands gently over his ribs, feeling for breaks. The boy cried out when she touched his left side. "Ribs too, then?" She looked up at the circle of worried faces. "All right, Buck, look at me. Just at me." She kept talking nonsense, mostly while her hands worked. "Check the arm first. Clean break below the elbow, thank God. No bone through skin." The head wound bled fierce but wasn't deep. The ribs worried her more. Men brought what she'd asked for. She cleaned the head wound first, whiskey making Buck howl. "I know it stings. You're being brave." She threaded a needle with steady hands. "This will hurt worse." Someone held his shoulders. Clara stitched quick and neat, 7 stitches, each one precise as any she'd done on silk bonnets. Different material, same principle. Make it tight, make it last. Now the arm. This was the test. She'd watched a doctor set her father's broken finger once. Watched and remembered because you never knew what knowledge might save you. "Buck, I need to straighten your arm. It'll hurt like the devil, but then it'll be over. Can you be strong for me?" He nodded, tears leaking from his eyes. Barely 19, trying so hard to be a man. "Silas, hold his shoulder. Tom, when I say pull his hands straight and steady, not hard, just firm." "Wade." She looked up to find him there. Must have arrived while she worked. "Hold him still." Wade's eyes met hers, reading the question there. She saw his answer, trust and necessity mixed. He braced Buck's torso with careful strength. "On 3. 1. She positioned her hands on either side of the break. 2. Drew breath deep. 3. Tom pulled. She guided the bones, feeling them grate and shift. Buck screamed raw, then a subtle click. Pieces finding their place. "Done, good boy. The worst is over." She splinted the arm, swift and sure, wrapping it tight. The ribs she bound carefully enough, support to heal, but not so tight he couldn't breathe. Through it all, Wade's presence anchored the scene. Solid calm, trusting her hands with his boy's life. "Let's get him inside." Gentle now. 4 men lifted Buck like precious cargo. Clara directed them to one of the empty upstairs rooms, had them lay him on clean sheets she'd just washed that morning. "He needs watching tonight," she said, mixing willow bark tea for the pain. "Fever might set in or the ribs could shift." "I'll sit with him," Tom volunteered. "No." Clara tested the tea's temperature. "I will. This is my responsibility now." Ooh, Wade studied her, blood still on her apron hair escaping its pins. "You've done this before." Not a question. "My father. Factory accident. We couldn't afford a doctor most times." She helped Buck sip the tea. "You learn or you lose people." "We're grateful," he said and meant it. The men looked after their own. But this, he gestured at Buck, bandaged and breathing easier. This was beyond what they could have managed. It's what needed doing. The room emptied slowly, men touching their hats, murmuring thanks. Only Wade lingered. "You'll need supplies, real medical supplies." "I'll make a list." She wrung out a cloth in cool water, laid it on Buck's forehead. "Laudanum would help if the doctor has any to spare. Proper bandages, carbolic for cleaning wounds." "You'll have it." He moved toward the door, paused. Clara, that was remarkable. She kept her eyes on Buck. That was necessity. His footsteps faded down the hall, but his presence seemed to linger, the memory of his hands steady on Buck's shoulders, the way he'd trusted her without question when it mattered. Night fell slow. Clara lit the lamp, settled in the chair beside Buck's bed. He drifted in and out sometimes, lucid, sometimes lost in fever dreams. She bathed his face, checked his bindings, listened to his breathing. Near midnight, Wade appeared with coffee and sandwiches. Thought you might be hungry. Thank you. She accepted the cup, gratefully, warmth seeping into tired hands. He pulled up another chair, movements quiet for such a large man. Tell me about your father. The factory accident. Strange conversation for midnight in a sick room, but the darkness made confidences easier. He worked at a textile mill. Machines were always hungry for cotton, for profit, for flesh, when you weren't careful. His hand got caught in the gears. She checked Buck's pulse, found it steady. I fixed it best I could. He kept 3 fingers, could still work some. Died 2 years later from lung fever, but not from that injury. You were how old? 14. Old enough to know we couldn't afford help. Young enough to be fearless about trying. That's young to carry such weight. We all carry what we must. She met his eyes across the lamplight. You run this ranch, hold all these lives in your hands. That's weight too. He was quiet long enough she thought she'd overstepped. Then my father built this place from nothing. Died when I was 22, left me in charge of everything. I've made mistakes, lost cattle to blizzards, men to accidents, money to bad decisions. Sometimes the weight. He stopped, shook his head. But you're still here. The ranch survives. The men stay. She understood the need to name fears in darkness. That means something. Like keeping 3 fingers meant something. Exactly like that. Buck stirred, moaning. Clara helped him sip water, checked his temperature. The fever had peaked, starting its slow retreat. He'll live, Wade asked. Barring infection or complications, yes. The arm will heal clean if he doesn't use it too soon. Ribs take longer, but he's young. Thanks to you. Thanks to all of us. I couldn't have managed alone. But she smiled, accepting the praise. Anyone would have tried. No, his voice carried quiet certainty. They wouldn't. Most would have waited for the doctor, wrung their hands, maybe said prayers. You saw what needed doing and did it. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. She busied herself straightening supplies to hide it. My mother used to say that hesitation kills more people than mistakes. Smart woman. She was. Clara smiled at the memory. She'd have liked this place. The honesty of it. Work that matters, results you can see. No pretense or false promises. Is that what Boston was, false promises? She thought of Edmund's letters, careful lies wrapped in flowery prose. Among other things, Wade leaned forward, elbows on knees. Here the challenges are real, but so are the rewards. A broken bone set proper. A meal that fills hungry men. Clean sheets on beds. His eyes found hers. Small things, but true. Not small, Clara protested. You've been here a week. Already the house feels different. Alive again. It's just cooking and cleaning. It's homemaking. Different thing entirely. He stood stretched. I'll send Tom to relieve you in a few hours. No need. I'll stay. He shouldn't wake alone and confused. Wade studied her hair, half down, dress wrinkled, eyes shadowed but determined. You don't have to prove anything, Clara. You already have. I'm not proving. I'm finishing what I started. Something shifted in his expression, respect deepening to something warmer. Then I'll check on you at dawn. After he left, Clara allowed herself a moment of pure exhaustion. Her shoulders ached from tension, her hands trembled slightly from the precise work. But Buck breathed, steady, his color improving. She'd done that, taken a boy broken and bleeding, and pieced him back together with nothing but memory, necessity, and steady hands. The lamp burned low. She trimmed the wick, settled back in the chair. Outside, night sounds continued, an owl calling, wind through grass, the eternal whisper of the ranch breathing around them. Near dawn, Buck woke clear-eyed. Miss Clara, right here. How do you feel? Like I got stomped by a bull but alive. He tried to move, winced. My arm. Broken but healing. You'll be good as new in 6 weeks if you follow orders. Yes, ma'am. He paused, a young face serious. They say you fixed me up real good. like a real doctor. Just did what was needed. No, his voice was sure despite its weakness. Tom told me he thought I was done for. Said you worked like you had angels guiding your hands. The simple faith in his words caught her throat. She smoothed his hair back, maternal instinct surprising her. Rest now, healing takes energy. Wade found them there at sunrise, Buck sleeping peaceful, Clara dozing in the chair. She woke to his hand gentle on her shoulder. Morning, how's our patient? Better. Fever broke around 3. He'll be gore but whole. And you? He studied her face, the fine lines of exhaustion around her eyes. Tired, but satisfied. She stood, stretching stiffness from her spine. There's something clean about fixing what's broken, simpler than navigating what's bent but not quite broken enough to mend. He caught her meaning. Edmund, the complicated disappointments of civilized life. True enough. Come on, I'll walk you to your room. The men can manage breakfast this once. No, she smoothed her skirt's pinned up loose hair. Routine matters more when things go sideways. I'll rest after breakfast is served. Stubborn woman. Practical woman. But she smiled, taking the sting from it. Though I'll take that walk tonight if the offer stands, after a full day upright. It stands, anytime you need it. They went downstairs together into a new day. The men were already gathering word of Buck's survival spreading like sunrise. They looked at Clara different now. Not just the housekeeper, but someone who'd proven herself in the currency that mattered most out here. Competence under pressure, steady hands in crisis. She made breakfast, those pancakes she had promised, while accepting quiet thanks and answering questions about Buck's care. The work grounded her familiar rhythm, soothing after the night's intensity. But something had shifted in the night, subtle as seasons changing. She felt it in how Silas deferred to her opinion on Buck's diet, how Tom offered to help with heavy work without being asked, how Wade watched her from his seat with something new in his eyes. Not just respect now, recognition. One survivor seeing another and understanding the steel beneath the surface. She'd come here as a failed mail-order bride, accepting charity disguised as employment. But somewhere between stitching flesh and setting bones, between midnight conversations and dawn's quiet triumph, she'd become something else. Necessary. The words settled into her bones like truth. Not just useful or helpful or convenient. Necessary. As vital to this place as rain to grass or winter snow for spring growth. Clara Hartlade of Boston stood in her kitchen feeding hungry men while blood still stained her apron and satisfaction sang in her veins. Whatever came next, 3 months or 3 years or 30, she'd meet it with steady hands and clear eyes. She was home. The courthouse bell tolled 9 times as Clara smoothed her dark blue dress and checked her reflection one last time. Today was the day Marcus Crowley would face justice for his attacks on the Triple C. Today she would tell her story in front of judge and jury. Today she would discover if truth was enough to protect the life she'd built. Wade waited in the hallway, hat in hand, wearing his best black suit. He looked like what he was, a successful rancher, a man of substance, but Clara could see the tension in his shoulders. Ready, he asked, as I'll ever be. They walked to the courthouse together, joining the stream of townspeople and ranchers converging on the square. Word had spread the syndicate trial would determine whether small ranchers could stand against big money, whether justice existed for ordinary folk. Inside, the courthouse overflowed. Clara recognized faces from the restaurant, the mercantile neighboring ranches. The ranch hands sat together, Buck among them, with his arms still splinted, but eyes bright with determination to see justice done. Marcus Crowley sat at the defendant's table beside his expensive lawyer, looking smaller than he had that day in the saloon. Prison clothes instead of fine suits, shackles instead of gold watch chains. But his eyes still held arrogance, as if this were all some minor inconvenience. Judge Patterson called court to order. A fair man, everyone said. Honest. Not for sale like some judges in the territory. The prosecutor laid out the case: conspiracy to commit arson, attempted murder, destruction of property. 3 dead in the attack on the ranch. The evidence overwhelming. Then Crowley's lawyer stood to present his defense. Clara listened with growing unease as the man painted a picture of desperate businessmen driven to extreme measures by an unreasonable rancher who refused fair offers for his land. He spoke of economic development, progress, the greater good. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the lawyer said, his voice smooth as oil. My client may have made errors in judgment, but these were the actions of men trying to build prosperity for this territory. Men frustrated by the stubborn refusal of one rancher to participate in that prosperity. Clara's hands clenched in her lap. How dare he make Crowley sound like a visionary instead of a thief, the prosecutor called as witnesses. Silas testified about the first attack, the oil-soaked torches, the deliberate targeting of the barn, where horses would have burned alive. Tom described the night assault on the house, the systematic attempt to drive them into the open. Then it was Clara's time. She walked to the witness stand with steady steps, raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth. In the gallery, Wade's eyes met hers, steady, trusting. The prosecutor was gentle, leading her through the events chronologically. The first attack, and she'd stood at her window with Martha's shotgun in hand. The threats in the saloon. The final assault when Crowley's men had tried to burn them alive. Mrs. Morgan, the prosecutor said, in your opinion, were these men acting in self-defense or economic desperation? Neither, Clara replied firmly. They came at night armed with fire. They targeted sleeping animals and a house full of people. That's not business, that's terrorism. Crowley's lawyer rose for cross-examination. He was smooth, she'd give him that. Questioning her background, her sudden arrival in Montana, her convenient relationship with Wade. Miss Morgan, or do you prefer Mrs. given your arrangement with Mr. Carver? Clara's spine straightened. Miss Morgan will do fine, and there's nothing arranged about honest work for honest wages. Ah, yes, the housekeeper position. Tell me, is it common for housekeepers to handle firearms, to engage in combat with ranch hands? It's common for people to defend their homes when attacked by criminals. The lawyer smiled, thinking he'd found weakness. But this isn't really your home, is it? You're just an employee, a temporary worker with no real stake in this ranch. The words hung in the air as like a challenge. Clara felt every eye in the courtroom on her. This was the moment that mattered, not just for the trial, but for everything she'd built here. You're right, she said quietly. I came here as a temporary employee. 3 months, that was the agreement. Her voice gained strength. But home isn't about legal documents or property deeds. Home is about the people you'd risk everything to protect. She looked directly at the jury, now letting them see the truth in her eyes. Those men came to destroy something good. A place where people work hard and treat each other fair. Where a man's word matters more than his bank account. Where a woman can earn respect through her actions instead of her connections. Her voice rose slightly. I stood with a shotgun that night because some things are worth fighting for. And this ranch, this life we've built, it is one of them. The lawyer tried to recover, asking about her past, her reasons for coming west. But Clara answered each question with calm honesty. Yes, she'd been a mail-order bride. Yes, that arrangement had failed. No, she wasn't ashamed of needing work or accepting help when it was offered with honor. When she stepped down, the courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations. Clara had turned what should have been a moment of shame into a declaration of courage. Buck testified next, his young face serious as he described the attack, how Clara had saved his life with her medical skills. His voice cracked when he talked about waking to find her keeping vigil by his bed, refusing to leave him alone with his pain. Miss Clara didn't just fix my arm, he said. She showed all of us what it means to stand by your people no matter what. Martha took the stand after Buck, her testimony sharp and clear. She described the preparation for the attack, how she and Clara had worked together to defend the ranch, how they'd trusted each other with their lives. That girl, Martha said, pointing at Clara, has more backbone in her little finger than Crowley has in his whole body. She didn't run when the shooting started. She didn't faint at the sight of blood. She stood and fought like she belonged here. Because she does. The captured gang members testified last, desperate to save their own necks. They painted Crowley as the mastermind, describing his fury at Wade's refusal to sell, his determination to drive off the ranchers by any means necessary. He said the law wouldn't protect them out here, one man admitted. Said we could do what we wanted as long as we didn't leave witnesses. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, their faces were grim. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Ranchers cheered, townspeople applauded, and Clara felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. Judge Patterson sentenced Crowley to hang for murder. One of his men had shot a townsman during the final battle. The surviving gang members received long prison terms. Outside the courthouse, people pressed close with congratulations and thanks. But Clara only had eyes for Wade as he pushed it through the crowd to reach her. "How do you feel?" he asked when they found a quiet moment. "Free," she said simply, "like I can finally stop looking over my shoulder." They walked back to the hotel where they'd stayed overnight, ready to return home to the ranch. But as they prepared to leave town, Wade touched her arm. "Clara, there's something I need to ask you." She looked up at him, noting the serious set of his features. "What is it?" "Your 3 months are up next week." The words hit her like cold water. In all the excitement of the trial, she'd forgotten. Her temporary position was ending. Time to make the choice he'd promised her: stay or go with first-class passage anywhere she wanted. "They are," she agreed carefully. "I know what I want to ask, but I need to know what you want first." His hands were steady, but she caught the uncertainty in his voice. "Do you want to stay, not as an employee, but as more?" Clara's heart skipped. "What kind of more?" "The kind where you don't sleep in the hired help's quarters anymore. The kind where what's mine becomes ours. The kind where—" He took off his hat, ran fingers through his hair. "Hell, Clara, I'm asking if you'll marry me. If you'll make this place as much yours as mine." She stared at him, speechless. In all her imagining of this moment, she'd never pictured it happening on a dusty street outside a small-town courthouse, both of them still dressed for court, still high on the adrenaline of justice served. "Wade, I know it's sudden. I know we've only known each other 3 months. But Clara, these haven't been ordinary months. We've been tested by fire, literally. We've seen each other at our worst and best. I know you're strong enough for this life. Question is, do you want it?" She thought of Boston, of the careful life she'd built there before it all came apart. Safe, small, ultimately empty. Then she thought of the ranch of mornings in the kitchen, feeding hungry men, of nights on the porch, listening to Wade talk about his plans for the future. Of the satisfaction she'd felt setting Buck's arm, defending the barn, standing up in court. She thought of Sarah's letters hidden in Wade's desk, of her own grief shared in lamplight, of two wounded people learning to trust again. "Yeah," she said simply. His face transformed, relief and joy mixing in equal measure. "Yes. Yes to all of it. To you, to the ranch, to whatever comes." She stepped closer, not caring who might see. "But Wade, I have conditions." His eyebrow raised. "Conditions. When we marry, I want it to be here, on our land with our people. Not fancy, but real." "Done. And I want to keep teaching Buck and the younger hands their letters. Maybe start a school eventually. The territory needs one, yes. And Wade?" She took his hands in hers, felt their strength and steadiness. "I want partnership. Real partnership. Not just in the house, but in the ranch. Teach me the business side. Let me help with decisions. Clara, you held off a gang of killers. You saved Buck's life. You stood up to Crowley in court. You're already my partner in everything that matters." His arms came around her, solid and sure. "But yes, full partnership. Might shock the county, but they'll get used to it." "Good." She rose on her tiptoes. "Now kiss me properly. We're engaged." He laughed, the sound rich and free, then obliged thoroughly. When they broke apart, both breathing unsteady, he rested his forehead against hers. "When Christmas, after we get the house ready for winter, after the harvest is sold." "Christmas it is." He stepped back, suddenly formal. "Clara Morgan, you have made me the happiest man in Montana." "Clara Carver," she corrected with a smile. "I like the sound of that." As they climbed into the wagon for the ride home, Clara felt the last pieces of her new life clicking into place. She'd come west looking for security and found something far better: purpose, partnership, and love, built on shared trials and mutual respect. The road stretched ahead, leading back to the Triple C, back to the life they'd built and defended together. Behind them, the courthouse stood as testament to justice served. Ahead lay winter preparations, wedding plans, and the 1,000 small decisions that would shape their shared future. But right now, in this perfect moment, Clara was content to sit beside Wade as he drove them home. Home to the ranch that had tested them, the men who'd become family, the land that had taught them both what they were truly made of. The sun painted the mountains gold as they rolled through the Triple C gate. Tomorrow there would be work, there was always work. But tonight there would be celebration as the ranch family welcomed home their engaged couple and toasted a future bright with possibility. Clara Morgan had stepped off a train 3 months ago with nothing but heartbreak and stubborn hope. Clara Carver would build something magnificent from the ashes of that old life, something strong enough to weather any storm. After all, she'd learned that the best foundations were often built on broken ground, and she and Wade had certainly been through enough breaking to build something that would last forever. Christmas Day dawned clear and cold. The Montana sky stretched like blue silk over snow-covered rangeland. Clara stood before the mirror in her room adjusting the simple white dress Martha had helped her alter from her mother's wedding gown. 6 weeks since Wade's proposal. 6 weeks of preparation not just for a wedding, but for the blending of two lives into something stronger than either had imagined possible. The house hummed with activity below. Martha directed the cooking with military precision, while the men arranged furniture in the main room for the ceremony. Reverend Hayes had arrived last night, bringing with him 3 neighboring families who'd made the journey despite winter weather to witness the union. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Wade entered, handsome in his black suit, carrying something wrapped in brown paper. "Thought you might be getting nervous." "Not nervous, ready." She studied his reflection beside hers in the mirror. "Are you having second thoughts? Only about waiting so long to ask?" He handed her the package. "Wedding present. Wanted you to have it before we go downstairs." Inside the wrapping, Clara found a leather-bound journal, the cover tooled with her new initials, C.C. Carver. "For the school," Wade explained, "to record lessons, track the children's progress. The county approved funding yesterday. You'll be the first official teacher in 3 counties." Clara's throat tightened with emotion. Not just the gift, but what it represented. His faith in her dreams, his willingness to help her build something beyond their shared life. "Wade, it's perfect, but I have something for you too." She moved to her trunk, pulled out a bundle of papers tied with ribbon. "I've been working on these since October. Preliminary sketches for expanding the ranch operations." He untied the ribbon, studied the drawings with growing amazement. Plans for improved cattle handling facilities, water management systems, even a small bunkhouse for married hands. "Clara, these are professional quality. Where did you learn to draft like this?" "Watching my father at the mill. He was good with machines, understood how things fit together. I guess I inherited that." She pointed to specific details. The water system would pay for itself in 2 years. The handling facilities would reduce injuries, save time during roundups. "My business partner," he said, wonder in his voice. "I'm marrying a genius." "You're marrying someone who pays attention, who thinks about how to make good things better." He kissed her, then soft and promising. "I love you, Clara Carver." "I love you too." The words came easier each time she said them. "Now shall we go get married?" The ceremony was simple, as Clara had wanted. She and Wade stood before the fireplace, their ranch family gathered around them, speaking vows they'd written themselves. No flowery language, just honest promises about partnership, faithfulness, and the courage to build something lasting together. Buck, his arm finally healed, served as Wade's best man. Martha stood beside Clara, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. When Reverend Hayes pronounced them husband and wife, the room erupted in cheers and applause. The celebration continued through the afternoon. Tables groaned under Martha's feast: roasted beef, fresh bread, preserved fruits, and a cake that was Clara's own secret recipe. Music came from Tom's fiddle and Jake's harmonica, filling the house with sound it hadn't heard since Wade's childhood. As evening approached, neighbors began the journey home, bundled against the cold but warm, with good food and celebration. The ranch hands drifted to the bunkhouse, giving the newlyweds privacy. Finally, Clara and Wade found themselves alone in the parlor, the house quiet around them except for the crackle of the fire. "How does it feel?" Wade asked, pulling Clara close on the settee. "Different, right?" She leaned into his warmth. "Like the last piece of a puzzle fitting into place. The house feels alive again, like it did when my mother was here." Clara understood. The Triple C had been a successful business before, but now it would be a home. A place where love lived alongside ambition, where partnership meant more than just shared labor. "Tell me about your plans," she said, "for the ranch, for the future." Wade's eyes lit up. "With the new breeding program and your facility improvements, we could double our herd in 5 years. Maybe start selling breeding stock instead of just beef cattle. Build something that lasts generations. In the school, the territory's growing, families are coming, kids need education. You could shape the next generation, Clara. Teach them not just reading and writing, but how to think, how to question, how to build, instead of just take. She thought of Sarah's letters still locked in Wade's desk, of her own lost child, the dream that had died in blood and grief. Sometimes the family you created was stronger than the one you'd lost. Wade, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think Sarah would approve of us, of this life we're building? He was quiet for a long moment, firelight playing across his serious face. I think Sarah would be amazed by you. She always said, I was too careful, too afraid of taking chances on people. His arm tightened around Clara. But you took the biggest chance of all, on me, on this place, on love, when you had every reason not to trust it. Love isn't really a chance, Clara said thoughtfully. So, not the kind we have. We earned this, tested it, proved it could survive the worst things we could throw at it. True love is forged, not found. Exactly. She turned in his arms, studying his face in the firelight. Wade, I want to write her a letter, Sarah. Tell her about us, about the ranch, about the life she'd be proud to see you living. Clara. Not to send, obviously, just to write. Sometimes saying goodbye properly helps the living more than the dead. He nodded slowly. I'd like that. Would you help me write it? Of course. They spent the next hour working together, Clara's pen capturing Wade's words. A letter to his sister telling her about the woman who'd brought laughter back to the Triple C, about the school that would bear the Sarah Carver name, about forgiveness and second chances, and the slow healing that came from building something good. When they finished, Wade carefully folded the letter, walked to the fireplace. Goodbye, Sarah. Thank you for teaching me what love looks like. I promise to love Clara with the same fierce protection you deserved. He dropped the letter into the flames. They watched it burn smoke, carrying their words up the chimney into the starlit Montana night. Now, Clara said, standing and offering her hand, Mrs. Carver would like to see the rest of her house, Mom. Wade laughed, taking her hand. Mr. Carver would be delighted to provide a tour. They climbed the stairs together, husband and wife partners in every sense of the word. Behind them, the fire settled into glowing coals. Outside, snow began to fall again, blanketing the ranch in pristine white. In the morning, there would be chores, responsibilities, the endless work of building a life together. But tonight was theirs, a celebration of love, earned through trial trust, built through shared danger and hope, strong enough to weather any storm. As Clara had learned, the best stories didn't always start with once upon a time. And sometimes they began with a woman standing alone on a train platform facing an uncertain future with nothing but courage and the determination to build something better from the pieces of what had broken. But they always ended with happily ever after. 5 years later, Clara Carver stood on the porch of the expanded ranch house watching her 4-year-old son James chase chickens in the yard. His laughter carried on the spring air, pure and bright as morning sunshine. Behind him tottered 2-year-old Sarah, named for the aunt she'd never meet, determined to keep up with her brother on stubby legs. 5 years of marriage had brought changes Clara never could have imagined. The ranch had doubled in size, the school served 30 children from 5 counties, and the house rang daily with the sounds of family life. Mama, James called, holding up a brown egg. Found it. Careful with that treasure, Clara called back, one hand resting on her swollen belly. Baby number 3 was due in the fall, and this time Clara felt only joy instead of the fear that had shadowed her first pregnancy with James. Wade emerged from the barn, Silas beside him, both men's faces animated by discussion of the new breeding program that had made Triple C cattle famous throughout the territory. At 40, Wade carried himself with the confidence of a man who'd built something lasting and good. Mrs. Carver, a voice called from the gate. Clara turned to see a familiar wagon approaching the weekly mail delivery from town. Afternoon, Pete, she called to the driver. Anything interesting today? Letter from Denver, Pete replied, handing her a thick envelope. Official looking. Clara's heart skipped as she recognized the return address, the office of the territorial governor. She and Wade had been working for months to establish the Sarah Carver Memorial School as a model for education throughout Montana Territory. Wade, she called, you'll want to see this. He strode over, wiping his hands on a rag. What is it? Clara opened the envelope with careful fingers, scanned the official language, then broke into a wide smile. "They're approving our proposal. The territory wants to fund 5 more schools based on our model. And Wade?" She looked up at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. "They're offering me the position of territorial education supervisor. I'd help establish schools throughout Montana." Wade swept her into his arms, spinning her carefully given her condition. "Clara, that's incredible. You've just become the most important educator in the territory." "We've become that," she corrected. "This was your idea, too, Sarah's legacy living on through education." James and little Sarah ran over, sensing celebration. Wade scooped them both up, the family standing together in the afternoon sunshine. "What's happening?" James asked with 4-year-old directness. "Mama's going to help build schools all over Montana," Wade explained, "so children everywhere can learn to read and write and think for themselves." "Like my school." "Exactly like your school." Clara looked around at the life they'd built, the prosperous ranch, the thriving school, the children playing in a yard where she'd once fought armed raiders. She thought of the terrified woman who had stepped off the train 5 years ago, convinced she was broken beyond repair. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the best things grow from the worst moments." Wade understood immediately. If Edmund hadn't broken his promise, if your sister hadn't died, if we hadn't been tested by fire and danger and grief, we never would have found each other. Clara leaned against his shoulder, watching their children play. Never would have built something this strong. As evening approached, the ranch settled into its familiar rhythms. Dinner around the expanded table, children bathed and tucked into beds, accounts reviewed in the office that was now Clara's as much as Wade's. But tonight, after the children were asleep and the house quiet and Clara and Wade sat on the porch swing Wade had built for their first anniversary, the stars stretched infinite overhead, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed contentment. "Any regrets?" Wade asked, echoing the question he had posed on their wedding day. Clara considered seriously. "Only that it took us so long to find each other." "Well," Wade said, pulling her closer, "we've got time to make up for that. All the time in the world." And as the Montana nights settled around them, Clara Carver, former mail-order bride, current rancher's wife, future territorial supervisor of education, felt the deep contentment of a life well lived and love well earned. She traveled far to find home, but the longest journey had been learning to trust in possibility again. Learning that broken hearts could heal stronger than before, that loss could teach lessons as valuable as joy, and that the best partnerships were forged not in easy times but in the fires of shared struggle. The wind sang through the cottonwoods, carrying the eternal promise of morning and all the adventures still to come. And in the house behind them, 2 children slept safely, dreaming of the bright futures their parents were building. One choice, one challenge, one act of courage at a time. Some stories end with a kiss, some with a sunset ride into eternity. But the best stories, the ones that matter, end with the quiet promise of tomorrow. With work still to do, dreams still to chase, and love still growing deeper with each passing season. And Clara Carver's story, that was just getting started. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope Clara and Wade's journey from strangers to soulmates touched your heart the way it touched mine while writing it. Their story reminds us that sometimes our greatest disappointments become doorways to our greatest joys. That love forged in the fires of adversity burns brighter and lasts longer than any fairy tale romance. If you enjoyed this tale of courage, healing, and finding home in unexpected places, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Your support helps us create more stories of love, conquering all, whether it's in the untamed American frontier or any place where brave hearts dare to hope again. Leave a comment below and tell me, what would you have done in Clara's shoes when Edmund rejected her at that train station? Would you have been brave enough to accept Wade's offer and build a new life from scratch? Share this video with anyone who believes in second chances and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that broken doesn't mean worthless. It just means ready to be rebuilt into something even stronger. Until next time, keep believing in love, keep fighting for your dreams, and remember, home isn't a place on a map. Home is anywhere you find the courage to be truly yourself. See you in the next adventure.